What's happening, everybody? It's Eric J. Olson. Today we are going to do something a little bit different. And this is going to be a live recording that we are going to chop up and use for our podcast, Journey to $100 Million. So this is a podcast that Kevin Daisy and I do. It's a daily podcast. And what we like to do is talk about things that we're learning as we build our company and mistakes that we make and basically how we're trying to just like take one little step at a time towards $100 million company. But we also recognize that we don't know everything for sure. And so we like to talk to a lot of other business owners. So I've invited Chris on, who I know is from the Entrepreneurs Organization. We're both in EO. And I asked EO folks who would be interested in kind of sharing some lessons learned about growing their business. And Chris raised his hand. So, hey, Chris, I appreciate you being on. How you doing?
Hello, Eric. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So, yeah, we always like talking to business owners and kind of understanding the journey that you've been on. I mentioned that the podcast is Journey to $100 million. That's our stated goal is to grow to $100 million. But in entrepreneurship, we're all on a journey. People are in different places. Some people haven't started yet. Some people are done. One of the cool things about EO in particular is you get a lot of different exposure to people along the path of that journey. So if you would, why don't you give us a little bit of information about you and your company and what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. I'm Chris. I'm from Poland, although I was studying in the state of Illinois, so I have a little connection to the United States. And I would say I'm serial entrepreneur with deep focus on technology. I exited 2 startups. One was actually, for time being, more popular than Duolingo, which you probably know if you learn languages. Probably the most popular app for learning languages. So we when I was selling it, it was in 6 countries, including Canada and Mexico, more popular. So I exited this and exited the other one that was focused on 3D printing technology. And for 3.5 years, I'm a major owner and CEO of ESCOLA, which is a company, a software agency that I started 3.5 years ago, having 5 people by acquisition. Now it's over 50 people, so we grew tenfold during 3 years. Now it's around $2 million revenue. So yeah, we mainly develop mobile apps. That's what we specialize in. We have some dedicated solutions, which is e-learning solution LMS, headless LMS, where we compete with Adobe. Also, we have a solution for events, meetinga.com, which is an event app. Guess it was not very popular during last year. And the third one, we compete with Booksy for booking vets and groomers, so all the things with animals, so we can book a visit. It's called a veterinarian app, and we are just starting, so we are about to start now.
All right, so there's a lot going on there. I do want to kind of unpack it little by little. So first, from Poland. So that's one of the cool things about EO. So anyone who's watching who's unfamiliar with the Entrepreneurs Organization, it's a global network of business owners that have revenue of at least $1 million per year. And like I'm in the United States, you're in Poland, but we have a commonality. And I think it's a great organization because of that. But also, like you talked about, you've had 2 exits already. I don't have any, and so what frankly, what I can learn from you is tremendous because you've gone through it not just once but twice, and so you have that experience, and so there's a lot of sharing that happens in the group. But
it's super easy to fundraise after you exited twice. Escola now is going public, and it's super easy to find investors once you did it successfully.
There you go. That's awesome. Illinois. You said you were in Illinois, United States, for a little while. What were you doing here?
Yeah, I was studying at Southern Illinois University, Salukis. So I was actually studying education administration because I was always operating on the kind of factor between education and technology, EdTech. and that's where my first exit was from. I actually came back from United States to start this first startup, being 24, and exited after 2 years. So it was quite a quick path.
That's super impressive. Another thing I wrote down that's super impressive. So you started 3 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 years ago with 5 people, and now you have 50 people. So you've grown tenfold in 3 years. Tell us about that. How does that happen? How do you do it?
Actually, they recently invited me for the Sales Angels conference, and I for the first time needed to think like how we did it, because we don't have any salespeople, and the reason for it is maybe very simple, and probably it's the same in all Central Eastern Europe, like because of probably a little bit of history of communism, we have really great engineers. If you look at the top 10 developers when you think about countries, there is always Russia, there is Poland, usually you have China, because you have heaps of engineers. But still, even though we think in Poland that our developers earn a lot, but comparing to what they earn in Silicon Valley or other parts of the United States, this is absurdly cheap. So you have basically the same quality or quite the same quality, and now most of us speak English enough. So basically, it's a quite good business. We sell most of our services to UK, Scandinavia, a little bit to United States, and it's quite easy to find customers, because if you live in wherever you live in United States and you look for hiring a developer, you would pay at least $50 per hour for a person mid plus. And in Poland, you can find easily a person for $50 with good service, and the same you can find in Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria. Also, we have very good taxation system in Poland. So I pay just 5% of tax because we are in the IT service, and Poland wants to really develop it and push it. So you have everything that complies, that you have good supply of engineers, good taxation system, and that allows us to grow very rapidly.
Wow. Yeah, you mentioned $50 an hour for a programmer. That's really cheap here, actually. So I would imagine that most are around 125 or so, something like that. And certainly it could go way up from there.
Yeah, so that's why people in States, but the same is in Scandinavia. Like if you have, let's say, Spotify, and you know, like half of the Stockholm's engineers work for Spotify, like you need to look outside. It's not only about the pricing, but it's also about availability.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now, are you building? Okay, so let's talk about what you guys build. So, are you doing like custom mobile apps for clients? Do you have any of your own products? You're doing a little both?
Yeah, if you think about Escola, it's about 80% is custom built applications for clients, mostly mobile, but very often it's mobile plus web or some service. Quite a big part of us is backend developers of Java or PHP. So we're quite handy with this matter, because almost every app has something. So some of our most renowned apps that we did was a cashless payment system for the gas station. So instead of going to the actual cashier, you just scan the code and you pay straight away at the tank, which is quite useful, especially during the time of Corona, and it's used in I think 2,000 gas stations now. So that's the solution we developed with one of the gas, and we got Mobile Trends Awards for this solution in 2019. And for this year's, we got an app that was even more popular than WhatsApp, Google Maps, and YouTube in Polish App Store, which was called Radio 357, which was crowdfunded radio, and it was like super popular and it still is in Poland, because people kind of were a little bit crazy about this radio and the people who built it, because it was like very big crowdfunded campaign. So we made it scalable with Amazon services, and it was quite a success. So we got this year's Mobile Trends Awards for this. So as you can see, the scope is quite big, like from entertainment to IoT apps. Some of the things we do for pharmaceutics. We also serve one of the global bank that unfortunately I cannot name, but it is quite popular in the United States. So yeah, we do lots of things, and I think we also serve a loan service quite big in London, uh, by the name of a quite famous author, Mr. Archer, James Archer. So he has a fund, and we help him to sort of his wealth and things about giving loans to the big investments. So yeah, we do various things.
That's awesome. Good for you. Now, somewhere along the lines when we were chatting, or maybe when we asked you questions when you booked your time, there was something about Uber for lawyers. What is that?
Yeah. Actually, I think we have Uber for everything now at
Yeah.
the moment. Yeah, but that's the thing we're developing at the moment. That's for a client. So let me not name it exactly, but it's basically lawyer services are quite expensive. That's one of the biggest disadvantages, and I imagine in Poland they're expensive, but in the United States they're like hyper expensive. So one of the biggest problem if people want to sell a house or just do quite simple matters, or they want to get a divorce, they spend quite a lot of money for lawyers. Of course, they are specialized agencies. They try to kind of do it from the template, etc. But imagine that you can actually have a call with your lawyer and send the documents over mobile or over computer, and just don't have a hassle for meetings and looking for actual lawyer. Or there is some kind of reverse bidding, of taking some proposals from clients to lawyers, because there are many good lawyers, but they are quite young. They're not in such prestige locations like New York, and they are still looking for the job. So I think this is quite a good idea, actually. I don't know how it will work, but I think that might be one of the startups that becomes quite popular, and I'm sure there is something like this in the United States as well.
Oh yeah. There's Lawyer Rocket is one. There's a big one. I can't think of the name. Where people go to get all sorts of legal documents. So yeah, there's a couple things like this. I think it's a great idea, especially since it's mobile. Like you said, lawyers are expensive, and you may just want to like one transaction. You don't necessarily want to create a big long lasting relationship. You just need something done. So it makes a
Yeah,
lot of
there are so many things, Eric, to be done in terms of mobile. Like today, I was negotiating a transaction of buying an app, or that you can actually order food, but without going to the bar. So let's say you are at the beach bar, and probably summer will be end of coronavirus, more or less, because of vaccination. So you want to go to the bar, but there is like a line,
yeah.
so you don't want to wait. So you just click in the app and you order 5 beers. Then you just go once they are ready, and you get push notification on your mobile. That sounds so super simple. And the app they were using last year, it had 15% turnover of 10 beach bars that we tested, which means that, and it was in the first year. So we want to acquire it and scale it. Why wouldn't be like half of these orders done by mobile, same like you have in McDonald's? Now it's
Yeah.
mostly done by the screens. So there is so much potential in bringing it to customer. Of course, it's sometimes I have this feeling that it's getting strange that we are now kept with our screens so much, and I'm really caring about digital well-being. But on the other hand, if you are into standing in the line just on your own and leave your friends, why wouldn't you just do 5 clicks and then maybe share the bill easy, etc., and spend more time with your friends? So there are so many applications there still to be done.
Yeah, I don't do a lot of bar hopping these days, but I definitely remember several times where there'd be, 3 or 4 like lines of people in front of the bar, and you're trying to find a little crack to get in, and then you got your money out and you're like trying to get the bartender's attention.
Potentially, yeah.
Just terrible, terrible. So yeah, that would be very handy. That's pretty cool. Well, on our podcast, like I said before, we like to share, frankly, mistakes that we've made. We're not timid about that. Everybody makes a lot of mistakes in business, but then more importantly, the lessons learned and the takeaways for the listeners. Is there like a story that maybe kind of comes to mind about a time, maybe recently, maybe a long time ago, or maybe like 3 years ago when you were starting your most recent business, about where you did something that wasn't quite the way that you probably should have, but then you were able to adjust, and you have some lessons learned, some takeaways from that. Something you can
No,
recommend
no,
to
no,
someone
Eric.
new.
I'm flawless entrepreneur. I'm like Steve Jobs, but with no personal issues. No, naturally. I was thinking a lot because they invited me like a year ago for this fuck up nights once, and they asked me like purely to talk 1 hour about all my mistakes, and I started to do a list, and it was like for 5 hours talk. so, but I made like which are the most common that I really committed, and I think all are connected to hiring people and not firing them early enough. So all the stories I actually have are connected to that I hired a manager who I really put big hopes in, and a person I know was a drug addict, but I didn't know. So the person was really having ups and downs, or I hired another guy who was really ambitious to the point that he was stealing some of the clients and giving it to his other company. So these were the big mistakes I made quite recently, like at the beginning of this company. Of course, you have 3 months to fire those people usually before the things are getting really wrong. And the funny history about this actually happening, the other guy who was like stealing clients, was that I went to my boss, to head of supervisory board. That's a guy who is like chief economist for the PwC, like super important guy. He teaches at Harvard, etc. And I say, okay, what should we do with this guy? I think we should fire him. So he said, not really. Let's give him a chance. Let's give him 1 more month. So after a month, this guy is still doing this, even after we had a talk. And I come again to my supervisor and say to him, we should really fire him a month ago. And he says, no problem. It's very good because we quite cheaply learned a lot. That's right. And I think it's a good approach. Always when you make a mistake, think about it, that you, without having a huge expense, otherwise that you bankrupt your company, it's really failing everything in your life. But this is quite rare situation. Usually you can really fix it and you draw some conclusion and you learn. So actually, I think doing business, being an entrepreneur, is actually like bumping from one mistake to another. And once you bump from those mistakes, the scale gets larger. But on the other hand, you know how to avoid those bumps more and more. So that's why I see this path, as you said, to 100 million or even bigger, of bumping from and learning from new experiences, which are usually our mistakes. It's of course good to read books, go to conferences, or learn from EO, which is like tremendous thing to learn. I'm there quite not quite long, like 2-3 months now, but we already had so many meetings that I learned so much that I even get a little bit of frustration that there are so many smart people in the world and I'm not smart enough. So I'm thinking, actually, I'm in a couple of groups now, and I'm thinking about quitting 2 or 3 because that's a little bit frustrating, seeing so much smartness in the room.
I'm with you. It can be very intimidating when some of these folks that are several steps ahead of me, just say something profound, and I'm like, I never even thought about that. Now, let's talk about like so kind of the mistake, to kind of summarize, was some hiring decisions, and in particular, you had a manager who was effectively stealing from you. He would take it sounds like your leads, and then he would send them elsewhere to a company that he was involved in or owned or something like that. And you took care of it in the end, but what would you do different, like now, to try to avoid that situation?
I think one of the main features of a good manager is the ability to listen, because oftentimes we think about leaders as a person who really goes on some kind of tribune and says a motivational speech that blows everyone's mind. But what I observed, many of the leaders are people who are actually quite shy, maybe quite timid even, and they're not so much of talkers. They're very good listeners. And drawing from this, I try to be more listening during the conversation. So once we have management, for instance, or any important meetings, I'm trying to listen as long as possible, and usually even give some last thoughts at the end of the discussion, not to get involved, because naturally once you are a leader, usually won't they everyone will listen to you, and it's very easy to draw fast conclusions. So my personal let's say mode for all the meetings and being a good manager and to avoid mistakes is to actually listen very carefully. And this listening very often means, for instance, when now is coronavirus and it's very easy to join any meeting, I very often join on mute, like totally without vision and without saying anything during the whole meeting. And then let's say I'm meeting a manager of this group and I say, okay, this and that you should do in another way. So that's my personal method, listening a lot and drawing conclusions as late as possible, but being very firm about saying like what's the strategy of the company. And that's naturally a very difficult thing. Like we as Escola, we have services, we produce apps, we produce software. So like if you ask me like what's our strategy, it's very difficult question for such a universal and such unanimous service like producing software. But I have, for example, a statement that is super important for me, which is I don't want to work with people who bother me, which means you have a lot of people who are, let's say, technically superior
Yeah.
over others, but their communication skills are not that great. So I try to not get involved in working with those guys. Of course, in the hiring process, sometimes it happens that such person comes to Escola, but we try to, let's say, not fire, but say bye to them quite quickly. And we try to keep this mindset that we want to feel good at work. Because, of course, if you have all those gold collar workers that we have, it means that we really need to take care of them. And it doesn't mean to give them fruits every Thursday or like sports cars or private medical insurance, because everyone gives that.
Yeah.
It's about having a good atmosphere. It's about having good communication skills in all the teams. So that's how we do it.
That's great. I love it. I love the advice of listening more than talking. And now I'll add to that that you need to listen to yourself as well. What I mean by that is if you're listening and you hear something or you think something based on what the person said, especially in an interview situation, in particular an interview situation, and something doesn't quite click or gel, it's I tell my team a lot like, hey, that's a red flag. And not that a red flag means we won't hire the person, but the more red flags that you see in an interview or when you're talking to a potential client, the more red flags, um, probably the more likely it is you're going to have trouble. So if you can, if you're seeing like 3 or 4 of these, and everyone's going to have a different number of red flags, that is like enough. But at some point, if you see 3 or 4, you need to be like, maybe this isn't a fit.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, but the other thing is listening to yourself. I mean, there is lots of discussion about meditation or how to get calm for a couple of minutes, at least a day or half an hour. Like my method would be to go to the mountains practically every weekend or go for a long walk or bicycle, just simple things. I don't do like proper meditation with one giant mind or stuff. I tried, but what serves me better is to just go for a long walk and just be with myself, be with my own
there you
thoughts.
go.
I wanted to ask you, like, Eric, like what do you do personally? I really wonder.
So I exercise a lot. I'm training for a triathlon, and so
Hmm.
I'll have hours per day, usually very early in the morning, starting at about 5 in the morning, where I'm swimming, biking, or running. And
Hmm.
in particular with swimming, I don't listen. There are earbuds you can use to listen to something in the pool, but they're not that good. So it's just all I hear is the water gurgling, and
Hmm.
what that means is my mind is constantly like drifting and
Perfect.
thinking about the day
Hmm.
ahead. And so for me, that's very meditative. Just focusing on my breathing, Yeah, like you have to, because your face is underwater. So
Yeah.
focusing on the breathing, and same with the running, and same with the biking. If I can get my breath under control, then I'll be fine. And so that is, yeah, I don't meditate either. I don't have anything against it. I just don't do that. But that seems to really help me, kind of like get my arms around whatever's happening in my mind, get my breath under control, and then kind of connect my mind, and my body, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right, Chris, I know we allocated about 20 minutes, and yeah, we're definitely over. So I want to respect your time. I definitely appreciate you coming on to the show. We're going to take a couple of clips from this, and I'll probably do like a custom intro, and then it'll be part of the podcast. And so we'll let you know when that comes up. For anyone who's watching, any final thoughts, and how can they reach out to you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh my God, I have super difficult first and last name, and it was a trouble when I was in the United States. So I hope if you are listening over Spotify, you can read my first and last name, which is Krzysztof Wojewodzic. But thanks for that. It's that unique. If you type it on LinkedIn, Facebook, you can find me easily, and I'm quite active on social media, so you can find me there. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. By the way, so when I saw that name, I'm like, oh, I'm never going to try to pronounce that. And so let me take it away. So when you wrote Chris, and I'm like, oh, whoo. All right. All right. So here's Chris's full name. If you want to reach out to him, my guess is that there's probably not a lot of people with that first name and last name, at least.
Yeah, but maybe the easiest way to reach me, actually, we have escolasoft.com website, so you can find our website, and once you click it, you will find the contact to contact me or contact my company. So please be very welcome to contact us if you have any needs for I don't know, maybe service design or software production. Yeah,
is that the right URL right there?
Exactly.
There you go. All right, Chris. Hey, really appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.